Movies. Up until this point, we haven't talked about movies at all on this channel, so I figured what better way to start talking about movies on Jerry's Film Talks than to talk about my top 20 favorite movies of all time. Yes, that's right, 20. So I originally wanted to make this list like 8 to 10, and then I realized that's physically impossible. There are so many movies that I just absolutely downright love, and I figured, you know what? Because there are so many genres out there, we might as well throw them all in. I'd feel like it would be a little unfair if my list was like all dramas or like business dramas. So instead of doing something like that, why don't we just extend out 20? This is going to be no nonsense, very short descriptions of each movie and why I love them so much. So let's jump right in. And at the end of this video, I'm going to be telling you which one of these is my favorite. So wait for that. Check it out. And if you like this video, make sure you like it. And without further ado, let's jump right in with the first on this list, which is Eyes Wide Shut by Stanley Kubrick. Now, if you've never seen Eyes Wide Shut, it's Stanley Kubrick's latest film, and that being said, it's his last film because he passed away, I think, the year after he made this film, and there's really no way to explain what this movie's about. I mean, you can, in theory. It's Tom Cruise and Nicole Kidman. The two of them, when they were married at the time, they filmed this movie, and it's about the two of them and their relationships and their sexual fantasies, but Tom Cruise goes off and he sees this big wild party filled with people doing things, and it really like stains him because he realizes these are powerful, wealthy people in New York, and what he sees carries with him, and he gets death threats and things like that. And it's a really suspenseful dialogue story, and it is the best written dialogue on planet Earth. I absolutely love Eyes Wide Shut. It is extremely slow paced, but if you're willing to sit through something slow paced, the dialogue here is absolutely outstanding. Anyway, number 2, we have Django Unchained. This is the only Western really on this list, and I don't think there's a Western as epic and solid as this one from start to finish. This movie is just a blast. There's acting on different levels in this movie, whether it's from Jamie Foxx, who's giving it his all as Django, whether it's Christoph Waltz, who's giving it his entire all as the Doctor, I forget his actual name in the story, or whether it's Leonardo DiCaprio himself playing one of the best film villains ever, Calvin Candy. If you have not seen this movie, it is just so much fun. I think it's one of Quentin Tarantino's best, and spoiler alert, there is going to be a couple other Tarantino films on this list, so look out for that. And actually, there's going to be a couple Stanley Kubrick films on this list as well. So yeah, that's just one of a couple on here. Django Unchained, if you haven't seen it, highly, highly, highly recommend it. Up next, we actually have the one and only zombie movie on this list, and that's Dawn of the Dead, the original George A. Romero version, not the 2004 terrible version. I'm talking about Dawn of the Dead. Now, I understand that Night of the Living Dead is the first zombie film, and it's by George A. Romero, and Dawn of the Dead is technically the sequel to it, but this is the zombie film. Yes, Night of the Living Dead, like I said, it's great. It establishes the zombie genre, but this establishes the zombie drama. This makes a really compelling story. It's hands down the best zombie movie ever made. The cast of characters is awesome. The setting is awesome, and it's just fun. It's just downright fun. These characters are just amazing, and the music in this by Dario Argento is just off the frickin' charts. If you haven't seen the original, it's actually really hard to find on any streaming services. You have to like pay for it if you want it, but believe it or not, there are extended versions and director's cuts available on YouTube for free that you can check out. I don't know how legal that is or anything like that, but they are there. You can check them out, unless as of recording this they've been taken down. But yeah, it's a really great movie. If you want to get it high quality, again, it's a little hard to find, but you can find it really low quality on YouTube. Anyway, up next is comedy. This is my favorite comedy of all time, and I actually watched it in bed last night prepping for this video, and it's Airplane. Guys, if you haven't seen Airplane, literally everything about this movie is funny. Like, no joke, there isn't one unfunny aspect of it. It's not just funny. It's not like one of those movies where like you smile at and don't actually laugh. This movie is downright putting you in tears. Every line is just so funny. Every scene is so wildly outlandish in it. There's just not a single thing in it that isn't funny. And there's so many great moments in it. It's hard to pinpoint one singular one. If you haven't seen it, I really don't know what you're waiting for. I'm just going to show one little clip out of this one, and this is my favorite clip of the whole movie, but this is just such a small moment out of much more funny moments in the show.
It was at that moment that I first realized Elaine had doubts about our relationship. And that, as much as anything else, led to my drinking problem.
And a little fun fact about this movie, Jonathan Banks, who plays Mike Ehrmantraut, is actually in this movie as one of the air controller people. I don't even know what they're called. One of the people who works in the tower for the airplanes and things like that. Didn't even know that. On my rewatch, I just figured that out. I was like, wait, is that Jonathan Banks? Turns out it is. It's a really early start to his career. He has a couple lines in it, and it was just great to see. All in all, Airplane is fantastic. It is the best comedy ever, and if you haven't seen it, I don't know what you're waiting for. Anyway, up next, we have a business drama on the list, and there is a couple. That's why I extended this list, and this one is The Big Short. Now, I'm a finance nerd, so Big Short is just very appealing of a story to me. It's about the 2008 crisis, the housing crisis, and how that came to be, all about collateralized debt obligations and how that collapsed the housing market. And if you're into finance, this is a fantastic movie. Like, fantastic. The writing in it is so damn good. The story is fun to watch. And for people who don't know finance, everything is explained easily as well. They break the fourth wall a lot in this movie because they realize it's a very confusing topic. And it's just told so damn well. It's such a compelling story. If you want to learn how the housing market collapsed in 2008, highly recommend this movie. It is entertaining. It's fun. I've seen it so many times and it never gets old, and you always learn something new from it. Anyway, up next, we have the only like independent movie on this list, even though now it's just a cult classic, and that's Clerks. Guys, this is not a shocker. Kevin Smith makes some awesome movies, but Clerks is such a staple in history. Built on a budget of, I think, $26,000, Clerks was filmed in his actual place he used to work. He used to work at the Quick Stop. I don't know if it was actually called the Quick Stop. And it's about just two people fooling around working in a job that's minimum wage that they don't care about. It is fantastic. The story of how they filmed this is so good. They filmed it after hours, after the store closed because it was on a budget. There's just so many interesting tidbits about this movie, and it's a good movie. Yes, it's in black and white, but it is so amazing. The dialogue is great. The humor is great, and it's just a classic. There are about 37, get it, reasons that I love this movie, and if you haven't seen it, highly recommend. But anyway, up next, this is the second Stanley Kubrick movie video on this list, and it's The Shining. The Shining is the scariest movie I've ever seen, and it's not scary because there's like jump scares. It's not scary because there's monsters in it. It's scary because you are watching the de-evolution of someone. You're watching them go from relatively normal to mentally insane, and it is absolutely terrifying. If you're scared of isolation, this movie hits you right in the head. But I don't even have to explain it. There's no way on earth you haven't heard of The Shining. It's like it's a very famous movie. The Shining is that good, though. It's not underrated or anything like that. It is absolutely fantastic. It's a terrifying movie. And going on that theme of Stanley Kubrick, we have one more. I think this is the only other one on this list. And this one is the only sci-fi and fantasy on this list as well, and it's 2001, A Space Odyssey. And the name of the game here is visual storytelling. There isn't a lot of dialogue, at least for the first hour and a half of this movie, I would say. There's a couple lines here and there, but this is a visual movie. And for some people, it's a little weird. I don't blame them. This movie it starts out with gorillas and monkeys who learn how to use tools and evolves into the future of AI and things like that. And It is just told in such a beautiful way with no words, and there's not many filmmakers that are able to do something like that. The first 20 minutes alone make up for the 2 hour and 25 minute runtime, and not to say the rest of the movie is bad, not to say the other 2 hours are bad, but the first 20 minutes are just so incredible. There are some amazing iconic shots, such as the gorilla picking up the bone and then it automatically transitioning to a shot of an aircraft in space. It is absolutely amazing. If you haven't seen it, you will probably be a little bored for 2 hours and 25 minutes, but it's one of those movies you just have to see once. Like, there's some things you have to do. This is something you have to see once. Highly recommend it. And anyway, number 9 on this list is Forrest Gump. It is the only romantic drama on this list, and I think this is just one of the most creative movies of all time. There's a lot of movies that are probably a little bit like better from a drama standpoint or things like that than this movie, but this is just downright creative. You're following Forrest Gump, played by Tom Hanks, go through his journey in love with Jenny, going from, playing college football to, fighting in the Vietnam War, to becoming famous, to meeting not Ronald Reagan, to meeting JFK, and like all sorts of stuff. It's a fantastic movie that plays with real life events and adds Forrest Gump into them, and it is just such a compelling story. I guarantee you everyone here has watched the movie, so you know it's good. I don't think it's worthy of that much further of an explanation. But anyway, number 10 on this list is another business drama, because believe it or not, they are my favorite genre of movies, and this one is an Aaron Sorkin masterpiece, Steve Jobs. Now, unfortunately, Steve Jobs came out a little bit after the first Steve Jobs movie was released, and that was Jobs with Ashton Kutcher. And while that movie, Ashton Kutcher looks identical to Steve Jobs and kind of sounds and walks like him, this one, Michael Fassbender, who plays Steve Jobs in the Aaron Sorkin one, he doesn't look anything like Steve Jobs, but he does such an outstanding job of portraying what the real Steve Jobs was like. And obviously I didn't know Steve, like I can't call him Steve, we're not on a first name basis, and he passed away, but I read the Steve Jobs biography, or the autobiography, whatever you call it, the story of his life. And if you read that, this movie depicts that story that's told in the biography so unbelievably well. And while the scenes that happen in the movie, like a lot of the events take place right before a keynote speech, and that never happened. Those things in the movie never happen, but it shows his real personality in those clips. And it shows some real events, just of course made fictitious a little bit for the story. But that being said, it is just so good. It is one of the most true to writing stories. I think Andy Hertzfeld, who worked at Apple during the Macintosh launch, he said that this movie is so real to like what had happened. I forget the exact quote. I might put it up on screen now. But he said it's so real and none of it ever happened. Something along those lines, and that's what this movie is. It is done so well. And there's another Aaron Sorkin movie that I'm going to talk about right now, because number 11 is The Social Network. This is all about Facebook and Mark Zuckerberg, and the story of him falling out with his partner, whose name I can't remember off the top of my head right now. I would argue that the dialogue in this one is better, but they're both just as good. Steve Jobs and The Social Network are just fantastic movies. Jesse Eisenberg is so amazing in this film. I can't even. And so are the other actors in the movie, of course, but this is just done so well. I know it's a very famous one, so I'm sure you've seen it at this point, but if you haven't, I don't know what you're waiting for. It's such a great movie. And anyway, number 12 on this list is the only superhero movie on this list, because I don't like superhero movies, but there is one that I absolutely love, and it's cliched. It's Spider-Man No Way Home. Guys, if you haven't seen Spider-Man No Way Home, you must be living under a rock or something. That movie is just everywhere, but it is so freaking good. It's one of those movies that you thought, when you saw the trailers, you thought it was going to do cheap out cameos, and you would get like Tobey Maguire back and Andrew Garfield back in like cheap ways, but no, this movie did it so well. It did the characters justice. It was a fun story to follow. Tom Holland's Spider-Man is great as it is, so having him with the two other Spider-Men just works so well. They told an amazing story. The universe opened with it, and it was just so heartwarming. It is a great movie. I've seen it way too many times that I'm embarrassed to admit the number of times I've seen it, but it really is that good. I saw it in theaters, I think 4 times, and I'm not a superhero guy, but I grew up on the original Spider-Man, the trilogy with Tobey Maguire, so it meant a lot to me, and this movie was a perfect homage to it, whether it was actually one-for-one scenes just done in different ways, or just Tobey being back, or Andrew Garfield being back, even though his Spider-Man movies weren't that great. Andrew Garfield, I would say, stole the show in this movie. It's just such a good one. I absolutely love it, and maybe I'll do an actual video about this movie because it is that good. Anyway, number 13, which is a mix of crime fiction and business drama, yet again, is The Wolf of Wall Street. This one is super cliched. All of you have seen that movie, but it is so fun. It is funny. It's a great drama. It's a great story into a bit more of a fictitious life of Jordan Belfort, and it just speaks to home again because I'm a finance nerd, so a lot of it is just fun to watch from that perspective, knowing a lot of these things, even though they are, exaggerated, happened. At some point in time, things, one or another like it, happened, and it is very awesome to watch. It's just a great movie all around. Can't speak highly enough about this one, and I think I've said I can't speak highly enough about it for every single movie on this list, but whatever, we're keeping it in, god damn it. Anyway, number 14 on the list is Scarface, and for a crime film, this is, I think, the best out of them. There's a whole era of movies that are, crime driven, like The Godfather and Goodfellas and things like that, but Scarface is just awesome from start to finish. It is the encapsulation of the American dream, but how you get greedy with that American dream, and it is so damn well. I'm glad this movie got made. Al Pacino is so good in it, and believe it or not, you know who is in the movie? Don Eladio, who plays Manny in the movie. Don Eladio from Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul. He plays Manny. I didn't know that until recently, believe it or not, because I think, obviously he aged a lot. He doesn't look exactly like him, but just knowing that is so awesome and seeing the origin. And you know who else is in the movie? Hector Salamanca. He plays an assassin in the movie, which is crazy. I also didn't know that until recently, but obviously that's not the only reason that this movie is so good. It just is such a fun story about American greed, and it is just, from start to finish, awesome. Anyway, up next, number 15 is a historical drama, which is like an alternate history drama, and that's Inglorious Bastards by Quentin Tarantino. This had to make the list at some point, man. Everyone in this movie does such a good job. It is such an amazing take on World War II in an alternate world, and what would happen if we won the war in a different way, where we ended up killing all the leading people in World War II, and it is just so fun. I think that's the best way to describe it. Hans Landa, I said Calvin Candy earlier is one of the best film villains. Actually, I'm a little bit wrong. I really do think Hans Landa is like one of the best film villains ever, because he's not quite a villain, but he is a villain. He's a bad dude, but he's also like a bad protagonist, kind of. He plays both sides, and it is so fun to watch. I could watch this movie specifically just for him. And there's obviously other actors in it. I forget, for some reason, I obviously know his name, Brad Pitt. He does a fantastic job in it, and all the other actors and actresses do a fantastic job in it, but just honestly, Christoph Waltz as Hans Landa, he steals the show. I think he was born to play Hans Landa, and of course I also think he was born to play the Doctor from Django Unchained, which, believe it or not, is my favorite Quentin Tarantino movie ever. But Inglorious Bastards is just downright so much fun. And for number 16, we have the one and only kids movie on this list. I had to include one, and this is Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. No, I'm not talking about Charlie and the Chocolate Factory by Tim Burton with Johnny Depp, it's good. It's not a bad movie, but Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory is just such a heartwarming, fantastic family film. It really is. It is so just just heartwarming and fun to watch. It's entertaining from start to finish. It's meant for kids and adults, and it's just fun. It never gets old. It is a timeless classic, and it's just great. Gene Wilder is fantastic as Willy Wonka. The story about how that movie got made is just amazing, and man, there's just so much there. I absolutely love Willy Wonka. I've seen it 1,000,001 times, and it never gets old. And yeah, I think that's saying something. If a kid's movie like this, because I don't have any others on this list, but if a kid's movie like this can demonstrate that for me, I'm telling you, this is a classic. I'm sure you've seen it as well. But anyway, number 17 had to include one true stoner drama, or stoner comedy, I should say, on here, and that's Pineapple Express. Yes, this isn't the best comedy ever, and some would say like others like Anchorman or whatever, they'd be funnier, but Pineapple Express, I think I could quote every single line in that movie. There was just so much funny stuff in that movie, and one of the scenes that comes to mind that is just so downright hilarious is Ed Bagley, who is Cliff Main from Better Call Saul. It's when he meets Dale, I think his name is, and they're at the dinner table, and he's like,
"You assholes do exactly what I say, or I will take you outside and fuck you in the street."
No, don't do that.
Don't fuck us anywhere.
There are so many funny scenes in this movie. It's diabolical. It is so hilarious. It is a great stoner comedy. If you haven't seen it, you gotta check it out. There's some amazing actors in this one. James Franco's in it. Guy, I forget his name, is in it. It's on the Seth Rogen. That's his name. That was a horrible impression. Ed Bagley. Oh man, there's so many people in this movie. Believe it or not, Amber Turd is in this movie too. But it's such a fun movie, man. It's so funny. But anyway, number 18 is Weird Musical. And before I get into what this one is, 18, 19, and 20 are all technically like bad or weird films, but we're going to start with a weird or musical in general, and that's the Rocky Horror Picture Show. If you haven't seen it, it may make you feel a little uncomfortable, but it is a great movie. The musical is great. The story is so damn weird that you can't even pinpoint what it's about, and it's just fun. I think the best way to describe it is it's just downright fun to watch. It is just one of those movies you have to see. Even if you don't love it, you should check it out. You'll be weirded out, but you should check it out. And anyway, number 19, this is a so bad it's good, and that is Roadhouse. Oh my God, man. If you haven't seen Roadhouse, it is so damn funny. Patrick Swayze in this movie plays a bar bouncer at like a dive bar where everyone fights, and he just comes in and cleans slate and just makes all these changes to the bar, and everyone wants to fight him, and he does these insane karate moves. It is so funny. It's bad, but it's like good bad. I think this is one of those movies where like the actors and the writers and all that, they knew that this was like not a good movie. It was a cheesy martial arts movie, but it is so freaking good. It's funny at times because of the karate moves that they do and like the cheesy dialogue, but it's so fun. I could come back for more 1,000,001 times with this movie. It is so funny. If you haven't seen Roadhouse, it's so worth it. Fun little fact about this movie, my coworker for years, literally years, was begging me to see this movie. He's like, "Jerry, you gotta see Roadhouse, gotta see Roadhouse." I saw the trailers and I was like, I'm not seeing this movie. And then one day I got bored and I saw it and I was like, oh my God, you were right. This movie is amazing. It is so worth it. It is a fantastic movie. You got to check it out. And lastly, it brings us to number 20. But before we wrap up, I'm going to tell you which one of these is my favorite. But number 20 is so bad, it's incredible. And that's The Room. Guys, if you haven't seen The Room, I don't know what you're doing. I don't know what you're doing. The Room is so bad. So bad. It's Tommy Wiseau, and it's abysmal. But it's incredible because it's abysmal. Like, this movie is trying so hard, but they're not trying at all. And I feel bad for the other actors because the other actors did such a fantastic job, but Tommy Wiseau is literally like an alien from another planet. It's like he has to learn how to speak English just to play the role. Like, it's so funny, man. I'm just gonna play a little clip from the movie right here.
Hi. Can I
Like, that is not real. That is just not real. That's not real life. And it's so funny because the story of how this movie got made is just so good. There's actually a James Franco movie out about this called The Disaster Artist. It's based off of the book written by one of the other actors in it. I forget his name. It's Greg something. But that is a fantastic book. I just recommend you see The Room and then you read The Disaster Artist, because the actual author does an audiobook version of it and it's so good. His impressions of Tommy Wiseau are so funny, but man, it is just a gem. It is really striking gold. It's horrible, but it's so incredible at the same time. It is so worth it. You guys have to check it out. It's so good. And so, yeah, that's the list. That is all 20 movies, and there are absolutely a ton of other movies that I love, but these are the 20 movies that I think like define me best. They're all just so great in their own way, and they're all pretty unique to their specific genres, so I tried to keep it as even as I could, even though there's a couple more business dramas than anything else. But with that all out of the way, the moment you've been waiting for is which one of these is my favorite. And I got to tell you, this was a really hard decision to come to, but I think I figured it out. My favorite movie out of all of these is Steve Jobs. Now, even I will be the first to admit there are statistically and technically, based on production, writing, and all of that, better movies on this list than Steve Jobs, but something about this movie just hits so close to home for me. I think what it is Steve Jobs has been my biggest inspiration my whole life, and just seeing a movie that was so well written about him that it felt like it was made by Apple, if that makes any weird sense. It's so great. It is such a treat to see. And if you're a Steve Jobs fan, this is so well worth it. But that's my favorite. And honestly, I could go down a list and basically find a reason that any one of these is my best movie, like my single most favorite. But really looking at this list, Steve Jobs is the winner for me just because I relate to it a lot. I love this movie and I love Steve Jobs. So yeah, that's the list. I'd love to hear your list of favorite movies. If so, leave it down below. I can't wait to start a healthy conversation down there in the comments. If you liked this video, make sure you like it. Subscribe if you haven't already. And until the next one, I'll talk to you later. Peace out.